So a judge in New York State has just ruled that non-citizens aren't allowed to vote in elections. Let's check it out. My name is Nathan Laurie. If you are new here, we talk about the law and the facts. If you're about that life, don't forget to like this video, share this video, and subscribe to the channel. So this story is brought to us from Axios. Judge strikes down NYC law granting voting rights to non-citizens. A New York State judge on Monday ruled that New York City law granting non-citizens the right to vote violates the state constitution. Shocking, right? Big picture. The New York City Council in December voted to allow non-citizens to vote in municipal elections starting in 2023. Now, I was here when they did this, and a lot of people had issues with it because they felt that allowing non-citizens to vote would dilute the voting population. Now, there are some other cities that allow non-citizens to vote.
Breaking overnight, the city of College Park has a city council, and they've voted 4-3 now to allow non-citizens to vote in the city's elections, even if they're in the country illegally.
Officials made the decision last night after a 4-hour meeting.
Vote in local elections, but it's abnormality. It's not the norm. So I know here in New York, people were very concerned that the vote of citizens would be diluted because we had so many non-citizens who are here in New York that could really change the way elections came out. After New York City Mayor Eric Adams allowed the law to take effect in January, more than 800,000 permanent residents and green card holders became eligible to vote in local elections. There are more non-citizens who they were going to allow to vote in New York City local elections than there are in certain states in America. Driving the news, State Supreme Court Justice Ralph Porzio struck down the law, saying New York City exceeded the authority granted to it by the New York State Constitution. Porzio noted that both the state constitution and state election law expressly mention that citizens meeting the age and residency requirements are entitled to register and vote in elections. So the state constitution limits voting to citizens. At first glance, you say, well, hold on, 800,000 immigrants from whatever country who are here in the city, that's not really going to change anything because New York City is essentially a Democratic stronghold anyway. How would that change? But if you think that's the case, you haven't been paying attention. See, for 20 years, first we had Mayor Giuliani for 8 years, who was mayor. Then we had Mayor Bloomberg, who was Republican, and he was mayor for 12 years. So that's 20 years of Republican rule. Matter of fact, just recently, Mayor de Blasio, he won 2 terms and was term limited out. So we've just in the past, 30 years, 20 of those years were under Republican rule here in the city. So if you now add 800,000 more essentially Democrats to the voting rolls, that's going to make it really harder for any Republican who's trying to seek citywide office like a mayoralship to win. Because now you've just literally diluted any Republican vote or any Republican leaning votes here in the city. And I think that's what the Democrats wanted to do by adding all these essentially Democrats to the voting rolls. Now, just because you're adding 800,000 immigrants to the voting rolls doesn't mean they're all going to vote Democrat. But the numbers are what they are. When polled, most of these people support and are represented by Democrats. So this was a ploy by the Democratic majority in New York City to make it harder for Republicans to win citywide offices and even local offices, because we do have some Republicans in the city council and so forth and so forth. But if you're adding almost 1 million more people to the voting rolls who are heavily Democrats, that's going to make it harder for Republicans to win. And that's kind of what we were having going on here in the city. This was a ploy to make New York City even more blue. It's just what it was. And the judge goes on to say, though voting is a right that so many citizens take for granted, the city of New York cannot obviate the restrictions imposed by the Constitution, he added. So what they're saying, well, the RNC, Republican National Committee, is proud to head a broad coalition and successfully challenging this unconstitutional scheme that will continue to lead the effort across the country to ensure that only citizens can vote in American elections. The Republican National Committee Chairman, Ronna McDaniels, said in a statement, the RNC was party to the lawsuit. And that is it. And they have the ruling here. The RNC, I think, did the right thing because they saw the writing on the wall. If you allow almost 1 million more people, more Democrats, onto the voting rolls. You effectively are going to dilute any Republican votes so much that it's just going to be even more of a Democratic stronghold. And they weren't stupid. They were just like, no, we see what you're doing and we're going to challenge it. And I think the judge actually made the right ruling because, again, in New York, the state constitution is pretty clear that you have to be a citizen to vote. Now, some people say, well, nature being so hard, why is it so important? Well, one of the benefits of citizenship is voting, right? And if you want to vote and you want to be a part of the political process, you have to become a citizen. This end around to try to just allow people to vote who are not citizens, I think it's a bridge too far, right? I'm a pretty liberal guy, but that's a bridge too far. And let's just think about if I wanted to go to some other country, right? And I just lived there for 2 years and say, hey, now I want all the same rights as citizens. People are like, no, you go through the process, become a citizen, give up your citizenship from where you were from, and then become a citizen here and have some skin in the game. And this was just a political ploy to try to make it seem like we want to take care of these people and give them a voice in a political process. But really, these people weren't dumb. They were saying, no, let's see if we can get as many Democrats on the voting rolls as possible. And then we don't have to worry about running against Republicans. We just got to worry about running against Democrats. But hey, that's my opinion. What do you think about this story? Do you think this was a bad decision? Do you think that immigrants who with green cards, legal immigrants, should be allowed to vote in American elections as citizens? What rights do you think citizens should have versus someone who's not a citizen? Is voting one of those things? Let me know in the comment section how you feel. My name is Nate the Lawyer. I'm out of here. Peace.